This is a group reading, Tarot with Titania, on May 24th, 2020. And we're looking at the energies of leadership. What do we need to know about leadership today? We'll start with the intention and then we will get into the reading. So I just invite everyone to take 3 deep breaths. And see tree root coming out of the base of your feet, base of your spine, anchoring you deep into the earth, grounding you and pulling you into the present moment. Knowing that that root is a conduit for you to easily release anything that no longer serves you, so that it can be used by Mother Earth as compost for new growth. Creator, this is your daughter Titania, and I am here with your children, both on this call and listening in the future, to do a reading, to be a clearing for light, for wisdom, for clarity, for upliftment and empowerment. My intention is to be a clear channel for the information that most needs to come through right now, today, for the highest and greatest good of anyone who is here on the call today and who will be listening in the future. I ask my higher self and the higher selves of all those listening to be present and facilitate this exchange and ensure that it happens in the highest and best way possible for the highest and greatest good of all concerned. I'd like to ask an overlighting angel of communication to be here and facilitate this exchange and ensure that it happens in a good way as well, that I use language that you will effortlessly hear, understand, and integrate for your highest and greatest benefit, and the benefit of your families, your communities, wherever you stand in the world. I invite the 4 archangels to come and hold the 4 directions around us, creating a sacred space of light, of wisdom, of clarity, empowerment, healing, of clearing away anything that no longer serves us and hinders us in our standing, in our leadership, and in our inner power. I invite Raphael to hold the east, Michael to hold the south, Gabriel to hold the west, and Uriel to hold the north. Thank you for coming and creating a collective space wherever we are, bringing us together across time and space, creating a perfect container for us to do this work, to grow and expand and become more than we are. Thank you. So we're setting the tone for ease, for upliftment, for celebration, for empowerment, for anything that is in our hearts and minds at this time, for the highest and greatest good of all concerned, and anything that does not match these frequencies is welcome to go now. Let's begin. The theme today is leadership, and we'll start with what it is that we need to know about leadership right now. Leadership for ourselves, and leadership in the bigger picture. And so the foundation card is an addition today. This is what underlies the energy of leadership. And this is the card of the Hanged Man. And the Hanged Man is about pulling yourself to a new perspective. It's about seeing things with new eyes, giving yourself a new lens to look through so that you can see your life and your experience in a new and different way. It's about, it's a major arcana. It has to do with soul growth. It has to do with our reason for being here. And this is our foundation card. This is about, so this would speak to me that any of the cards that we look at in regards to leadership today have to do with this idea of pulling ourselves to a new perspective and using our wisdom and our guidance our inner wisdom and guidance to have a new resilient outlook on our lives. And when we don't understand something, or something just doesn't seem to make sense in our lives, just giving ourselves permission to take a step back and look at it a different way. The other level to the Hanged Man is that the Hanged Man is supported by the Tree of Life. So in other cards, you'll see him hanging from a tree, or from a sort of a tree-like structure. But it's this idea that we're connected to all life, and through that connection, we have an opportunity to have a new perspective, to be more resilient, to be more insightful, because we can call on a broader perspective, and using that to give ourselves more information about what we're about. So that's our foundation card for today. Okay, so recent past with regards to leadership, the High Hierophant, another major arcana, another pay attention card. So the High Hierophant, the other name for the Hierophant is the Pope. It's also the inner teacher. And this sits in the recent past. And this has to do with that wisdom that comes from within, developing that connection to the inner teacher, developing that connection to the inner knowingness that is there. There's also a lot about tradition with this card, and so often we come to our spiritual grounding through a spiritual tradition, which has a method of development that enables us to learn to access the deeper wisdom within ourselves. Some of our institutions, of course, perhaps have lost this, or are no longer teaching this, but it's still, that's the whole idea of any sort of spiritual structure, is to provide support and guidance and tools to those who follow it, so that they can deepen their connection to their source and have access to the wisdom that is there for them. So this is sitting in the past. So this is where we're coming from in terms of our leadership, understanding that we have access to wisdom, that we have access to that collective knowledge, or a greater body of knowledge that gives us access to this, as I said, this inner teacher, this inner knowingness, which would inform our leadership, which would inform us in terms of how we are bringing ourselves to the world. The present card is the card of signals. So we're taking in information. This is a card of communication. Incoming information, incoming messages for us to look at and weigh. It's informing us. So this is again, this is personal, it's collective, it's about us taking in, again, there's so much going on in our environments, there's so much information coming at us, and so finding a place to stand as that information comes in, and finding a place of clarity and centeredness, so that we can make sense of the information that is coming at us, and so that we are no longer overwhelmed by the information, is really important. So this idea in our lives of leadership within ourselves, leadership is something that comes from within us, and we learn to stand in that within ourselves and within our own lives, and as a result, we're able then to create space for the other people in our lives. Okay, the future of leadership is temperance. So of course, temperance is balance. It's about using resources wisely. It's about not overdoing anything. And so that to me speaks of the idea of power, and the idea of how do we use our leadership. And this isn't about domination over others. This isn't about squelching somebody else's power, or for their own good, using our power to take them somewhere where they don't want to go. This is about being wise in our use of our power and our use of our leadership. Leadership is not just about externally being a clearing for others in their power, but it's about being a clearing for our own power and standing in that power, knowing how to use it wisely, and share our gifts and our power with others in a good way. So we have 3 major arcana, which speak to me of the importance of this idea of leadership and power right now in our lives. And this idea of being deeply tuned to the wisdom of our source, of where we come from. And the best tool I know for that is, of course, meditation, is sitting quietly. And this idea that grounding and that connection to source, but doing it with intention, is what leadership is about. It's part of that pulling of that wisdom, pulling of that knowledge very intentionally into our lives and creating a foundation that we can stand on, so that as life comes forward towards us, we're really clear about what we were taking in, what we were giving out. This idea of communication, of being in the world and of the world, and dynamically engaged in life, it's so important to have a foundation to stand on. The near future, this idea of temperance, of using our leadership wisely, not overdoing anything, not overdoing, and not undermining someone else's power and their leadership. And this is, it's interesting because I think there's we see a lot of power plays in our culture, and our story of the patriarchy has been about domination, has been about overcoming another, dominating another to have power. And we're entering into a new time when we're each called to recognize and foster and cultivate our inner power and express it in a good way. This idea of signals, this idea of expressing ourselves from our inner place of power in a good way, so that we can share what we have to give in the world without squelching anybody else, without needing anyone else to suffer for us to feel empowered, or to feel stronger, and to feel wise and able to give our gifts in the world. The Hanged Man is the foundation to all of this, and this requires us to be resilient and adaptable, and not too attached to any one way of looking at things, to recognize that having flexibility to be able to adjust and adapt our perspective, our perception, is super important, so that we can when we encounter challenges or we encounter problems, we can relax and breathe and look for ways to come at the challenge, so that we have a reframe to our problem. Sometimes it's just the tiniest tweak, as we all know, that makes the difference in our lives. It doesn't necessarily have to be something dramatic or different, but just a small reframe can make all the difference when we're faced with a problem or a challenge. So the idea of resilience in our perspective, being able to pull ourselves to a new perspective, that takes intention, that takes leadership, that takes discernment and wisdom and groundedness. It takes presence, being in our present moment. Being able to draw from our source of inner wisdom, our inner teacher, the guidance that is there for us, relying on meditation or another source of grounding for ourselves, so that we can deal with the information that's coming at us, and that we are expressing ourselves in the way that we most want to. I think that's another aspect of leadership, is this idea of choosing how we are expressing ourselves in the world, and choosing to be, to have a clear idea what that means for us. My intention is to be a clear channel for light, love, wisdom, and beauty in the world. And so whenever I engage in something, that's what I put forth consciously within myself. And I believe that's really part of that leadership idea, is being clear. The clarity is important within ourselves. And then again, in the future, or this carrying forward, learning to be a leader, learning to hold our power, learning to walk in our truth and our grounding, and do this in a way that is balanced, that doesn't require anyone else to suffer for it, that is kind. And also, what I think is interesting about this too, is you see the angel is pouring water into the vessel that the other is holding. It's like this idea that when we're in leadership, when we're connected to ourselves, when we're listening to our inner wisdom, we're able to, in a way, it's like nourishing others, giving them what they need to be able to stand in their power and stand in their wisdom and their beauty, so they too can be a leader in their own lives and in their community, to bring forward what they have to give. So, does anybody want to talk about this or have any thoughts about this?
Can you throw a card for clarity on the Eight of Wands?
Yes.
I think the other ones were super brilliant. The fact that the Hangman came out was so good.
It is good, isn't it? Yeah, it's really interesting, because I think we're really being called on these days to be that resilient, adaptable person in regards to the information that's coming at us, the things that we see, not to get stuck in one perception, but just to stay soft and light and open, again, while listening to what's true for us, what we know to be true for us. Okay, so what we want clarity on the Eight of Wands signals. What do we need to know about this in regards to leadership? So the King of Swords. So that's about clarity. So swords are the suit of air. It's ideas in action. You think about a sword, it has a very sharp edge. When you use it, there's no going back. Like it's pretty intense in its action. And so the King of Swords as a person is somebody who is very well, a cerebral person, a thoughtful person, a person who is not, okay, so he's the King of Swords. So he's not the King of Hearts. The King of Hearts would be a very emotional person, or aware of emotions and sensitive and intuitive. But the King of Swords is somebody who's very practical, looks at a problem and uses his mind to solve the problem, and then resolves the problem. So it's a very practical card. And so it's interesting because it's come up on this incoming information. And of course, a king is a leader, which of course is, our topic is this idea of leadership. But this isn't somebody who is, the word escapes me at the moment, but this who's at the effect of his emotions. He's not sentimental. He's very practical. The word was sentimental I was looking for. So this idea of practically, of being rational, of being logical, and being reasonable, which is interesting in the context of us as looking at sort of things that may be more intuitive or woo-woo, if you will, because this is very much three-dimensional, practical, linear. And this is in regards to the present moment, and this idea of communication and incoming information. So this is about being practical, being really reasonable, being, again, the word is practical. Practical.
I was thinking next logical step.
Yes, thank you. Exactly. It's not complicated. It's just what needs to be done and being very clear about that.
Is the card also, I see sort of decisive?
Yes.
Because a leader has to make decisions, even difficult ones.
Yes, thank you. That's brilliant. Yes, decisive and next practical steps, definitely. And so it's interesting. I guess there's what this means for us is we have to be practical when we're making choices in our lives. And again, too, this idea of pulling ourselves back into the now, like we have a past card and a future card, but the thing is we exist right here, right now. And that's where our decisions are made. That's where we need to stay in regards to everything that's going on in our lives. That's how we can pull ourselves to a new perspective, is by staying in the now, the present moment. If we're thinking about the future, we're pulled off balance. If we're thinking about the past, we're pulled off balance. We can inform ourselves from these things, but we stay in the present moment, and we're empowered in the present moment. We're decisive in the present moment. We're choosing in the present moment. that to me is what this is speaking of, is this idea of our point of power is here in the now. And so leveraging that as a leader in our own lives and in the lives of others, as we, because we're together, we're in this together. We're not alone moving through life. We're in community moving through life. And so again, when we are strong in ourselves and clear in ourselves, it's so helpful for others. It's so empowering for others. It's nobody else needs to carry us. We can be supportive of others. We don't necessarily need to carry anybody else, but each of us in our power. Does that make sense, Julie?
Totally makes sense. I think it's very clear. I mean, it speaks to the heart of what leadership is, doesn't it? All of this is about not being distracted and not going into the, what's that, sort of frenzied state, but being clear. And I mean, all the words you've used, like deeper wisdom and information and balance and wisdom and higher perspective, so all those, just call us to be different, not different, but realize our complete tools that we can use. All the, I don't know, we're broader than, to be a bit more broad rather than specific is what comes to mind.
Yes.
Within the breadth comes the wisdom.
Yes. And not getting caught up, as you say, in the story or the drama or the all the extraneous stuff. It's like, let's come back to basics. Let's come back to facts. Let's come back to what is here in front of us. And in this moment, making the best decision possible from that place. And
being new in every moment. And yeah, there's something there about being new in the moment where perspective is king. Ha!
Oh, that's good. Thanks, Julie.
Yeah, I'm laughing.
Well, does this actually clarify our understanding and experience of leadership? Do we need to go further into this? Where is everyone at?
What I think it clarifies is the idea that you lead because you lead. You can't control others if they follow, but you can be your reclaiming the sort of the tools of who you really are. Seems to me that it makes it a very powerful statement, what's just going on there. I think it's amazing. You're amazing.
There's that thing too about authenticity, Julie, like you're saying that we have to be ourselves. We have to be authentic.
That's the right word. I would say overall in that's authenticity is the thing. You're absolutely hit it nail on. Full of goosebumps on that word. Yeah, absolutely. That's very yummy.
Linda, Emilie, do you have anything you want to jump in and say or add?
I would just like to point out that I just absolutely love the idea of remembering that the leader is filling others' vessels. I just love that card. That is a reminder, a big reminder that you're leading, but your real leadership is in filling others so they're capable of moving forward themselves rather than just bossing someone around. And as a parent, you need that reminder. I love that. Yeah, I do love that. And then the King of Swords really surprised me, but thinking about that being decisive without being overly emotional. Sometimes the hardest decisions in life are made, right, in moving forward and being a leader. And we have to be clear and practical without too much following the emotions, right?
Yes.
But following your wisdom. So that one really struck me as well.
Nice. Thank you, Linda. That was great. Yeah. I think it's interesting too, when we talked about the temperance card and how, the filling up of others, or the affirming of others, the seeing the good in the others, the possibility space in the others, holding space for that in others. These, I think true leaders are brilliant at doing that. They see the potential in those that are around them and they call it forth from them. And I think it's a great reminder with this one too. There's I guess because I'm a mom, there's this concern hearing about, filling other people up, that might empty me somehow. And what I love about this card of temperance is that it's the angel who's pouring forth that which fills the cup of the other. And so this remembering that when we're doing this good work of seeing others and affirming others, it's not from us. It's us being a space for something greater. It's this idea that we're connected to something more and flowing that energy out into the world, flowing that out into others and seeing them as God sees them, seeing them from that wiser, broader, higher place. That to me is really that wonderful possibility that is there for us as we hold that space of leadership, is realizing that we can be leaders, and as leaders we can be channels for that grace that flows through us into the lives of others, so that they too can pick up their leadership and stand and be of service and see and evoke the best from others. And it's this chain reaction, and what an amazing thing that can be. Thanks, Linda. That's great.
You're welcome.
I love that idea of chain reaction. That's really good. Actually, could you throw a clarity card on that one just to see if we can
unpack it a little more?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think there's something else there.
All right. So what do we need to know about this idea of temperance, of holding, of leadership, of supporting others into their greatness? All right. Anxiety. So that's kind of interesting. So the Five of Pentacles. And this card, you have this man and this woman. They've come to this beautiful building, and it's nighttime and it's cold and it's bad weather, and they need shelter, but there is something that doesn't feel right about this place. And so rather than knocking on the door, they choose to go on. That's the story of this card, the Five of Pentacles. And so what's interesting is we've turned this over on the card of temperance. I think just feeling that went out a little bit. It just feels like it touches into that thing that I just talked about being a channel of grace for somebody else, and being anxious. I guess just speaking from what's coming up in my space is this idea of the anxiety that comes when I think about leading other people. This idea that who am I to lead somebody else? Who am I to be that person who holds that space? Feels like I'm assuming too much. And this understanding of this recognition that we are more than we think we are, if we allow ourselves to be. It's remembering that we are channels for God's grace. We, each of us, hold that possibility within us. And this, to me, speaks of that trust in something greater than us, that trust that we will be carried if we trust. We follow our instincts, we follow what we know to be true, and it will work out for us, because when we put ourselves forth in service to something greater, we will be carried in the direction that we need to go in, and we will know if something is appropriate or not. We will know. We will be able to be this practical, decisive person. And maybe that won't happen in the moment, but it will come, because we've set our intention to be this clear channel. And it isn't about us and our small minds and our small agendas. It's about being in service to something greater. That to me is also part of what that leadership is about, is being in service to that something that is greater.
I had a thought around that based on what we were saying before about leaders and coming from a greater good. And this made me think of like our present day, a difference between, for example, Dr. Bonnie Henry and the approach that she's taken of calm, clear leadership, and the fact that in BC we've done fairly well in terms of pandemic, whereas then if you contrast to that to the US, then Donald Trump and more of that fear-based, and what are the motivations? Motivations are around economics and personal gain, and so it's that kind of came to mind of like those are two different styles of leadership, and we seem to be doing well in BC and under that kind of leadership, and the US is really struggling and for various reasons, but just kind of made me think of that when we talk about leadership and where the motivation comes from.
Definitely.
And how different that can be.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's a really good observation. That idea that, where are we motivated from? And setting that intention and being clear about that intention, and yeah, I mean, I think for all of us, I mean, I know for myself, if I was to choose somebody to be my leader, I would want them to be a selfless person in service to the greater good, not there because of personal agenda, because of what they can get out of it. And I think many times we see this in our politics, is that it's not clean. It's not about that service or that being of leadership. It's about what's in it for me and what the deals are. And I mean, we don't see it all, but we can sense when something is off.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we come across a leader who is holding that true space or that quality space, you really get a sense, that person is somebody to be relied on because they're authentic, they're in integrity, and they're also there in service to something greater than themselves. It isn't about their personal agenda. It isn't about what they're going to get out of it. It's about doing that bigger work.
Yeah, and when you said about anxiety, the word anxiety just made me think of, for some leaders, that's where it comes from, their own anxieties. And I understand that, and you can be passionate to a certain extent, but then, somebody who can lead beyond those personal feelings, because,
It takes a lot. I think it takes a lot to be a leader. I mean, I don't think any of us would argue that. To be a quality leader really takes a knowing of yourself and a willingness to show up and to be more than you are. So it's an interesting idea in ourselves, on the world stage, looking out at the people who are holding those spaces for us that we've chosen to hold space for us, and how they're doing it. I mean, this whole epidemic has been a fascinating study on different styles of leadership in ways, hasn't it? I mean, we have all these examples and people who are doing beautiful work of leading, and others who are making us question. It's very telling.
So this idea of anxiety, is that sort of distraction away from the clarity? So I'm just saying, if it's a clarifying card,
yes,
so it makes us perhaps be aware of the anxiety that can
surface. The clarity, definitely. And I think, again, because we're in the context of the COVID-19 situation and the anxiety that we're surrounded by, and the concern that we have for all the different bits of information that are coming at us, right? That being mindful, as you say, about not sliding into the anxiety, because that is clouding our capacity to be clear, our capacity to be resilient, our capacity to know ourselves, to know what's true from our heart outwards. This understanding of, how it applies to this in terms of us standing up and being a clearing, and of being balanced in our leadership, being affirming and recognizing other. And I think, perhaps the balanced piece too, about not over giving, that feels like that's part of this card, is this concern that could come up about over giving or not doing it well, or there's something about that. So this anxiety that could come about coming at leadership from a three-dimensional level rather than a broader perspective or a fifth-dimensional perspective, you know, understanding that we're a channel for something greater, and we have an opportunity to be decisive and clear as that channel. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because I'm thinking about this idea that, you know, three-dimensional is so distracting. That anxiety can sometimes make people unsure as a result of their unknowing of who they are.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so the decision making sort of has to come from this place of clarity and knowing that it's all going to work out.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting, and this is very interesting. Okay, so Lao Tzu says depression comes from looking at the past, and anxiety comes from looking at the future. So it's interesting that this anxiety card has shown up on top of the temperance cards, which is sort of sitting in our future of leadership, this understanding of the future of leadership. You know, we have to come back to our now. We have to not get carried away or get pulled off center by our thoughts and concerns about the future. We have to come back to the now. What do we know now? What is true now? What is really here now? And from the nowness, make our choices and our decisions. From what we know to be appropriate and authentic and true right here, right now, we make our decisions. And that moves us into our future.
That is so good, right?
Yeah.
That is just like,
Love that.
oh,
It's fun.
so fun.
Very good.
Thank you, Titania. Awesome.
No, it's my pleasure. That's good. Do we feel complete with this?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Okay, so let's so what I thought we could do next is if you guys have questions, this is the time. Let's explore them. Anybody have anything they want to look at? Okay. So what I was thinking is we could pull a card for each of us on this idea of leadership. What do we need to know right now for ourselves in regards to leadership? And just see what comes up. Again, understanding that we're all here, we're all part of the collective, and what's true for us will be true for others. And we can learn by just examining leadership for each of us, and what is it that we need to know about it right now.
Kind of like how the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm going to start with Emilie. So what does Emilie need to know right now about leadership? Okay, here we go. Force. So the message coming for you, Emilie, around leadership is this idea of not so much the word, okay, so force sounds pretty strong, but it's this idea of pruning. I always think of pruning when this card comes up. The Ace of Swords is the first card of the deck of swords, and this again has to do with ideas in action, taking action. And the ace would indicate the beginning of taking action, the beginning of new ideas, the beginning of taking action on those ideas. And as I said, I think about pruning when I see this card, because when you have a garden that's been neglected or a plant that's been neglected, it needs some attention, it needs some care, it needs some pruning often. The old, dead, diseased crossing branches have to come out to create air circulation and life to come into the plant. The air and the light and the water needs to be able to circulate around this plant so it can grow. And so in this card speaks to me for you in this area of leadership about needing to prune your life a little bit so you can create the air and the circulation and the space for more of your power and more of your leadership, your inner wisdom to be embodied and show up in your life. So that's the sense that I'm getting with this in this card. Do you want to add anything, Emilie? Do you want to explore this a little bit more? Does this make sense to you?
Sure, yeah, it makes sense. Love to explore it with another card if that's
Sure.
possible. There's time, yeah.
Hmm. So you'd like to understand a little bit more of what you need to know about applying this energy?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So you get joy.
Ooh.
So this, it's interesting because it's you know, this is a pretty, you know, it's business, right? This card is business. You have something to do and you've got to do it. But the motivation or how you apply this force needs to come from what lights you up, what brings you joy. This energy of, because our highest fulfillment, our highest path is always along the path of joy, is always along the path of our enthusiasm, is always along the path of what lights us up. And so as you come into your life and you begin to apply this energy of force, this energy of deliberately and intentionally pruning your life, it needs to be motivated from this place of what brings you to life, what brings you to joy, what inspires you, what excites you, what would get you jumping out of bed in the morning, looking forward to your day. So that's the qualifier for this card of force, is motivating yourself to do this clearing energy, this pruning energy, this making order of your life force from a place of joy, from a place of celebration, from a place of happiness. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I love that. And I think right now with so many people, that's the case where you're looking at how life has changed, you know, over the last couple of months. And that pruning is huge because it's like, what are the things that I used to do or had to do or felt like I had to do that I can shed now?
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people saying that, right? Of like, was that the best way for my life to be going? And what are the most important things right now? So when you say joy, yeah, for sure, that's the motivation
Nice.
of letting go and shedding things that just no longer serve us, right?
Definitely.
So, yeah, I can totally relate to that. And I think a lot of people right now too, probably,
Oh yes,
you know,
absolutely. And the
yeah,
simplicity too. You know, I mean, this is children on this card who are having fun
yeah,
together. So that return to what is simple, return to what is important, you know, what isn't complicated, what truly brings you joy, what truly lights you up. And often it's the simple things in life that do. And
yeah.
returning to that and letting that be your guide, letting that be the benchmark that you use as you move forward in your life prune.
And for me, it does make sense because there is a big change coming, and with that will be a lot of pruning and change and shifting. And yeah, so good to remember that joy aspect of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's great.
Thank you, Emilie. That's awesome. Okay, Linda, you are up next. So what does Linda need to know about leadership in her life right now?
I love the pruning and the joy. That sort of
Speaks to
really,
you.
because, yeah, because just getting back to what's important. We've talked about, um, you know, all of a sudden my garden is much bigger and much more plentiful, and just getting back to basics of life, which has just been such a gift.
Mm,
Um, maybe we could just continue with that idea because I love it, and how we can take that moving forward when life starts up again. Just the because it's easy to do when there's nothing really going on, but working against contrary forces,
hmm.
what how can we support that? How can we
Okay.
support that simplicity and that joy?
Okay. Let's answer Linda's question. So more of that same kind of energy, this success, this, okay, so this card is the 10 of Hearts. And on the card, you have a man and a woman, and they're dancing around. It could be their wedding, and they're surrounded by people who love them, and they're celebrating that community, that coming together as community and supporting each other in community, which is interesting. So in terms of, you know, going back to the real world, so to speak, and how do you carry that joy forward, it's about seeking opportunities to celebrate, to remember what's important, to give it attention, always highlighting it. If we, where attention goes, energy flows. It's like a plant. If you give it attention and love, it will grow. If you neglect it, it will die. So going forward back, as we reemerge, so to speak, into this world, which has changed and we're changed, to not fall into the old patterns, to not fall into the old traps, it's really important for us to continue to give life force and energy to those things that bring us to life, to really highlight them and make them important in our lives. It's up to us. Nobody else is going to prioritize that for us. We have to do it. We have to prioritize what brings us to life, what brings us joy. We need to celebrate it, bring it to life in community, whether that's in your family community or whether your larger community, bringing these things out, celebrating them, acknowledging them, being grateful for them, appreciation for them. All of that quality of energy is super important for keeping it alive in our lives. Does that answer your question, Linda?
So much. That's wonderful. You just said how to do it, and that's really important. That we basically forgot the things that are really important to us and let them
slide
go by the wayside.
Yeah.
And just remembering that we just have to keep paying attention to them. We have to prioritize them in order to keep them going. What a simple but beautiful idea.
Yeah. And maybe what would be helpful too is having a touchstone. So what does that, what are those, like, whether that's a vision board, cutting pictures out of a magazine and making a collage on the wall that reminds you with the words that stir you, that remind you of what's important. Like, I think that might be helpful for all of us going forward is to remember this. How do we remember this? What's the touchstone? What's the energy that we've tapped into, and how do we remember that energy? How do we carry it forward? So, maybe that's part of it, is creating a vision board around what's important to me. And then from there, sticking that up on your wall and looking at it every day as you go about your life, and just using that as a check-in to say, okay, am I on with this or not?
Nice.
Yeah.
The thing, a piece of advice that my husband gave me once was, like, look at your life kind of like a pie chart, and so that visual kind of around what are the most important things in your life. And it was very clarifying for me, because sometimes we put things into the things that maybe aren't what we want to be our priorities. And so just that visual, it's like a very business way of looking at it as a pie chart, but I am visual. So
Yes.
having colors and being like, this is the part of my life. And so it's like that vision board, like you said, something visual to go right. Am I still in balance with that in the way that I want it to be in my life, right?
Yeah, I love that. That's, again, like you say, it's that visual touchstone. I mean, I think so many of us are visual, and just having that thing to remind us that it's important. It's important because it is, as we know where we've come from, life is busy. We get totally knocked off our little centers, and before we know it, we're halfway down the road doing something we didn't really want to be doing. So keeping track of what's important and having it somewhere to remind us is, I think, super, super important. Does that help, Linda? Is that clear enough?
That's awesome, Titania.
Okay.
That's beautiful. Yes. Not just what to do, but exactly how to do it. So I appreciate that. Perfect.
My pleasure. Okay. Now, Julie, it's your turn. So what does Julie need to know right now about leadership? Okay. Oh, look at that. We got signals again. So this really speaks to where we just were, this idea of how do we keep it alive? And how we attract from life what we want is by keeping those things that are important to us alive and giving that energy and life force. So here, Julie, you have the card of signals, which is this incoming messages from the universe, it's stuff coming at you, things that you're thinking about, things that are coming your way that are inspiring you and stimulating you, because it is wands. Wands is about creativity, inspiration, passion. So this is incoming things that flare your creativity, your inspiration, your passion, your enthusiasm, the things that bring us to life. And it's interesting because as we looked at that last card, that idea of success and how do we keep the energies of what's important to us alive, when we give that energy, again, where attention goes, energy flows. This idea of feeding what we want to create. We have to give it life. We have to give it energy. We have to give it water. We have to give it sunlight. We have to give it air. You know, you think about a plant growing. We're growing too. We need to feed ourselves with those things that bring us to life. We need to feed ourselves with enthusiasm, with inspiration. And so this is sitting in your are asking for you around leadership. And for you, it's this continued dance with the universe and really continuing to play with this conscious pulling in of what it is that you want from the universe, continuing to play with this. This is, you know, your leadership is related to your capacity to again, to draw forth from the universe. And I think you have a gift, and your capacity for manifestation, for embodying this wisdom and this knowledge is really important, as your role as a leader on this planet is in, you know, you embody it, you know it, you can teach it to others because you know it so well. So this card of what you need to know around leadership is continue to explore this manifestation piece, continue to embody it, to make it yours, to really you know, bask in the juice of it, the fun of it, the enjoyment of it, all that you get out of it, so that you really understand it inside out. Because again, your leadership on this planet is around these qualities, is around this energy, this capacity to draw forth and pull things through into your reality. We're here in a, you know, we're so familiar with thinking about the world in terms of 3 dimensions, but really there's so much more here, and learning to leverage those laws of the universe so that we can live a more empowered, creative, passionate existence is what it's about. And so, you know, as we saw, recognizing the things that are important, giving energy and time and attention to those pieces, and doing it from a place of joy and cultivation, and then continuing to feed it with the attention that it deserves, the fertilizer to continue to keep those important pieces growing, and tools to help keep us on track is super important. And then again, this continuation of this idea is playing with it, is having fun with it, engaging with the universe on this bigger picture level of playing with your enthusiasm, playing with your energy, so that you can leverage your enthusiasm to draw more from the universe. And I know you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. It's interesting because and through this whole reading, I've been thinking that there's something about there's some things that are none of my business, and they will be worked out as part of the universal unfolding.
Yes.
It's not my job to work some things out, and it's my job to be a straight arrow, to be a unwavering kind of, now you got the knowledge.
Yeah.
There's no going back. You got it. You got to stick, and you got to, once you know who you are, there's no going back. Once you've got information, there's no going back.
No, you can't stuff yourself back into the little hole.
No, square peg, round hole. Yep. Yeah. And expanded beings can't do that. So that's really interesting. And it's been on my mind to not get muddled in the distractions of things that don't seem to be going right, i.e., you know, pandemic, blah, blah, blah. But that part's really not my problem. That is will work itself out as because I can't create in anybody else's reality. So mine is to be a straight arrow. I mean, I don't know if wands are ever considered arrows, or that sort of.
Well, that's definitely, I think, yes, in other decks, I think they have been considered arrows.
Arrows.
Maybe I have to think about that one. I'm not, yeah. But this idea of staying on target, not getting distracted, and continuing to do your part and doing it well, and leaving the bigger part to creator. Because as you say, there are the things that we are here to do and that we can do, and there are the things that are not ours to do that we can leave to the higher power to do for us, and just trust that it's all being carried.
And for me, that's very much about doing my thing and being, you know, if I seem like I show leadership and see people see it as leadership, but it's never my want to be a leader.
Right.
But you do it, I don't want to say properly because that's not the right word, but in alignment, then you can't help but be give more momentum to the whole experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think this is really what's important for us all to remember, is that when we are following our enthusiasm, when we are following those things that bring us to life, those things that move our heart and stir us, we are clearing for others to find that within themselves. And I think truly that's the world we want to live in, is everyone being on side with that, is understanding who they are, being authentic and congruent with who they are, and showing up in the world with that. And I think a true leader too also knows when something is not theirs to be done, or it's not time to do something, you know, and that often just shows up as you don't have an answer for that yet, or you don't know what to do with that yet. Well, when you know what to do, that'll be the time to take action on it. If you don't know what to do, it's just time to wait, or to let it be and trust that it will unfold perfectly, and you'll know what to do when the time is right. So it's very interesting, but I think, go ahead.
Filled with things when they, you know, feel like they're under pressure to make a decision, and then they, instead of just saying, you know what, not time yet, they make a decision, and well, you know how that turns out.
I think you moved away from your mic there.
Oh, am I too far?
Yeah,
sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think that's all about discernment about one's, if it's not clear, don't make a decision. It's either a hell yes or a hell no.
And if it's sort of somewhere in between, then to me that still speaks of it's not time. It's
not clear yet.
It's not clear, and if it isn't clear, then it's okay. And just being kind with yourself, knowing that.
Yeah, it's coming. Universe totally. It's on its way.
Yeah.
Thanks, honey. That was beautiful.
You're very welcome. Okay. I had a request from somebody who really wanted to be on today to just pull a card for her. So I hope you guys will be patient and we'll do that. Janet P., this is for you. What does Janet need to know about leadership? You get victory. And this is this idea of holding the energy of what would it look like for you to be victorious in your life? What does that look like? If you were to spend time with that concept of being in victory in your life, what would that look like for you? Who would you be? And that is what the leadership piece is for you, is about accessing, tapping into that inner concept of the victorious self. Whatever that means for you. I mean, we have another wand here, that's creativity, inspiration, and passion. That really is what fuels us. I mean, come on, it's the suit of fire. Fire is what lights us up. So going within, listening to what it is that's inspiring you, that fires you, and getting a grasp on the picture of victorious you, victorious Janet. Who is she? What does she look like? How does she operate? What does she wear? Where does she live? What does she do for a living? What does she carry forth into the world? And familiarizing yourself with her, becoming friends with her, cultivating a relationship with her, so that she can come into the world and be this wonderful clearing for passion, creativity, inspiration, and share her gifts broadly. Because of course, we're all needed here on this planet. We're all needed in this capacity of victorious selves, congruent, authentic, happy, aligned selves, showing up in the world, sharing what we have to give. That's where we will have the greatest satisfaction in our lives. That's where we'll have the greatest passion and purpose. So there's the message for you today, my friend Janet. And then I'll pull one for me. And what do I need to know about leadership? Okay, well, we get the defeat card. So what does that mean?
Sorry, what was the name of the card?
Defeat.
Oh.
So it's incoming energy. So I think to me that what this speaks to is this idea that adversity is always an opportunity for growth. As things appear to be against us, it is always an opening and an opportunity. This comes back to that card of the Hanged Man and this pulling ourselves to a new perspective, having a different way of looking at whatever it is that we're facing, and not allowing ourselves to be defeated by it, but to use it as an opportunity for greater clarity about what is wanted, and to help us clarify our direction, help us clarify the way we want to be going. Anybody have any thoughts? They want to jump in? Okay. So that's interesting. I will have to meditate on that one. But in terms of leadership, it's recognizing that any setback is always an opportunity for clarity.
I totally get that. I mean, for me, when I think of defeat, I think of this sort of energy of, okay, I must be pushing too hard against what I don't want.
Right.
And if I'm pushing too hard again, I'm not realizing the thing I do want because I'm not in alignment with it.
Right. Attention is going the wrong way. Yeah.
Well, and those are great gifts because they give such clarity. I mean, the relief and clarity that can come from that place. And it's all about, I suppose, taking the bounce, as they say. Yeah. So it can be very energetic and full of great push forward as a result.
Nice. I like that. Thanks, Julie. Yeah. It's like a slingshot. That's good.
Your own personal elastic band.
There we go. Don't we all need one of those? Propel us onwards. Okay, so I feel like I need to just pull one more card for all of us. Just one last card, just to send us on our way. So let's see what that is. What is it that the cards want to tell us? It's one last send off. So this is that card of indecision, which is interesting. Again, sort of that being, so you see she's immobilized. She has swords to the left, swords to the right, swords from the incoming, and she doesn't know what to do. It's interesting. We were just talking about this energy of when you don't know what to do, it's not time to make a decision. And so you see she's being very still. It's almost like a position of surrender. I would definitely say it's a position of surrender. She's stilled herself. She's pulled herself into this quiet position of surrender. And then she has this incoming information to the crown of her head, which is like this divine inspiration that is coming to her. And so just a parting, I think, reminder to all of us is when we're feeling undecided about something or unclear about something, it's totally okay for us to ask for help and to take a pause in our life, not rush ahead and boldly make a decision when we don't know what we want, but to wait for that wisdom to come, to wait for that inspiration to come, knowing that it will come, having faith that it will come, putting ourselves into a position of receiving. And that is our parting message today, this idea of when we don't know what to do, it's not time to make a decision. It's okay for us to ask for help from a higher power, from our higher wisdom, whatever you want to call it, and to just give ourselves a bit of space to take a moment to surrender to that broader, wiser perspective and let it work through us and come up with a wonderful solution for us. So that's the parting message. I want to thank everyone. I'm going to just close our gathering here with a prayer. Creator, this is your daughter Titania. I'm here with your children on this call, past, present, and future. Thank you so much for your guidance, for your wisdom, for your inspiration. I am so grateful for all the help that we've received today, all of those who are here holding space with us, pulling us forward into our wisdom and our power and our leadership skills. I'm grateful for all who are here today, helping to refine and elaborate and expand the message. You all had such wonderful insights and contributions to make, and I thank you. The reading is at an end. May this message, may this information find its way to the people who are seeking it, that it may help them to become more than they already are, that they may stand in their power and their leadership in a good way, always for the highest and greatest good, always in service to life, always in service to that which is greater than we are, with love, with light, with kindness, with healing. The reading is at an end. I'm so grateful, Creator, for this opportunity. Thank you. Blessings to everyone on this call and listening in the future. You are all loved. So it is.